The Civil War wasn't just fought with muskets, cannons, and raw courage. Hidden strategies, daring maneuvers, and secret intelligence were the invisible hands that shaped the very outcome of America's bloodiest conflict. From the audacious flanking attacks of Robert E. Lee to the clever countermoves of Ulysses S. Grant, the real battles were often fought in the shadows, long before the first shot was ever fired. In the next 15 minutes, we'll uncover the strategies, the secrets, and the genius behind the war that decided the fate of a nation. Welcome to Historica A.I., where we reveal history's hidden stories. Today, we're diving deep into the Civil War, not through its famous battles alone, but through the brilliant strategies that defined them. Now, you've probably heard of Bull Run, Antietam, or Gettysburg, but few people realize just how much tactics, deception, and intelligence shaped these outcomes. We'll explore the early Union and Confederate game plans, battlefield innovations, hidden moves that changed everything, and the secret intelligence that gave one side the edge at the most critical moments. By the end of this video, you'll see the Civil War in a completely new light. The war began in 1861, and the first major battle at Bull Run was a brutal wake-up call. Both sides were inexperienced, and the Union hoped for a quick, decisive victory. But the Confederate generals, capitalizing on familiar terrain and perfect timing, turned the tables. In those early days, strategies often relied on pure improvisation. The Confederates mastered defensive positions, luring Union troops into vulnerable areas, while the Union experimented with massive assaults and coordinated troop movements. Both armies learned a hard lesson, and they learned it fast. Strategy was just as important as firepower. It wasn't just about who had more men or guns. It was about how you moved them, where you positioned them, and how well you could predict your enemy's next move. Intelligence became absolutely crucial right from the start. Scouts, local informants, and intercepted telegraph messages allowed commanders to make informed decisions instead of just reacting. Even before the first major battle, strategy and information were already shaping the war in ways that would decide which side gained that all-important momentum. Now, you can't talk about Civil War strategy without talking about Robert E. Lee. He was one of the most brilliant strategists of the era, and his style was as audacious as it was calculated. Lee had a remarkable ability to turn his smaller Confederate forces into tactical victories through clever flanking maneuvers, using the terrain to his advantage, and a healthy dose of deception. Take the Battle of Antietam in 1862. Lee's forces surprised the larger Union army by splitting his own army and attacking at multiple points, masterfully exploiting their weaknesses. Later at Fredericksburg, his defensive positioning on Marye's Heights was so perfectly chosen that it decimated wave after wave of Union attacks. These weren't just brute force showdowns. They were complex chess matches where Lee moved his pieces with incredible precision, constantly testing Union leadership and morale. Lee's brilliance was a game-changer. It forced the Union to completely rethink its approach to command, logistics, and battlefield positioning. Every success and every failure in these early battles carried powerful lessons that would echo throughout the entire conflict. While Lee was dazzling everyone with his audacity, Union generals eventually began to match his strategic genius with their own brand of innovation. Enter Ulysses S. Grant, a master of persistence and, more importantly, logistics. Grant started using coordinated assaults, holding strategic reserves, and building sophisticated intelligence networks to counter the Confederate maneuvers. His campaigns out in the Western Theater, especially the Siege of Vicksburg, were a masterclass in how strategic positioning, cutting off supply lines, and using entrenchments could wear down a powerful enemy without relying solely on risky frontal attacks. Then you have George Meade at Gettysburg. He brilliantly used the terrain and defensive lines to blunt the Confederate advances. By carefully placing his artillery and infantry, he effectively turned the battlefield into a deadly trap for Lee's forces, which ultimately led to one of the war's most decisive Union victories. These countermoves weren't just gut instinct. They were carefully planned strategies that combined hard-won experience, solid intelligence, and keen battlefield observation. But beyond the generals and their grand plans, the Civil War was also a shadowy war of intelligence. Both sides relied heavily on a network of scouts, spies, and telegraph communications to try and anticipate what the enemy would do next. Union agents operating deep in Confederate territory gathered vital information about troop movements, fortifications, and supply lines. At the same time, Confederate scouts and Southern sympathizers were busy monitoring Union activity and passing critical updates back to Lee and his generals. Sometimes, these hidden moves were the single factor that decided victory or defeat. The ability to predict an enemy's actions, reinforce a vulnerable position just in time, or execute a complete surprise attack often shaped the outcome of a battle more than sheer numbers or firepower ever could. The planning that happened in the shadows, far from the cannon smoke and musket fire, was just as decisive as what happened on the front lines. Many of the war's most pivotal battles perfectly reflect the strategic minds behind them. At Gettysburg, both sides used feints, flanking attacks and defensive entrenchments in a desperate struggle to gain the upper hand. At Vicksburg, Grant's siege tactics were a combination of attrition, brilliant engineering, and solid intelligence that starved the Confederates into surrendering. And all across the war, new innovations like complex trench networks, coordinated artillery bombardments, and advanced signal communications completely transformed the way battles were fought. Strategy also dictated logistics, which is the unsung hero of any war. Supplying massive armies across vast distances, ensuring troops were ready for battle, and anticipating the enemy's logistical needs were all integral parts of the plan. These tactical innovations, when combined with intelligence and battlefield courage, were what ultimately defined which battles were won and which were lost. So, as we've seen, the Civil War was so much more than just soldiers and battles. It was a war of strategy, intelligence, and hidden genius. From Robert E. Lee's audacious flanking maneuvers to Ulysses S. Grant's methodical and relentless counter-strategies, the war was decided as much in the minds of the generals as it was on the fields of battle. Understanding these strategies gives us a much deeper appreciation for how America's fate was shaped during those critical transformative years. If you enjoyed exploring the hidden strategies and genius of the Civil War, make sure to subscribe to Historica A.I. We bring history's untold stories to life, revealing the secrets that textbooks often overlook. Don't forget to like, share, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story from America's fascinating past. Thanks for watching.